She saved an entire town, yet her story vanished from every textbook. One woman alone. One stormy night. And one decision that saved thousands of lives, but that no one ever wanted you to know about. This is the story they erased from history books, but it's about to change everything you think about heroism. It was a cold March night in 1876 when Kate Shelley, a girl just 15 years old, heard the sound that would change her life forever. A metallic crash tore through the silence of the storm. She ran to the window of her small wooden cabin in Iowa and saw the impossible. The railroad bridge over the Des Moines River had collapsed. Freight train cars were plummeting into the turbulent waters like broken toys. Men screamed for help, but their voices were swallowed by the roar of the storm. And Kate knew, with absolute certainty, that another train was coming. A passenger train. With 200 people sleeping peacefully, never imagining they were racing straight toward death. In that moment, Kate had two choices: stay safe at home with her 4 younger siblings, or do something no adult would dare attempt. The nearest bridge was over a mile away. To get there, she would have to cross another railroad bridge, the Honey Creek Bridge, during the worst storm that region had ever seen. There were no handrails. There was no protection. Just wooden railroad ties spaced out over a 20-meter drop, with a raging river roaring below. One wrong step and she would fall into the frozen darkness. But Kate didn't hesitate. She grabbed a flickering lantern, put on her deceased father's soaked coat, and went out into the storm. The rain fell so hard she could barely open her eyes. The wind was ripping trees from the ground. Lightning illuminated the sky like open wounds in the universe. And she began to cross the Honey Creek Bridge on her knees, feeling for each railroad tie in the darkness, praying the structure wouldn't collapse like the other one had done minutes before. Every meter was an eternity. Her hands bled as she gripped the rough wood. Her knees were bruised against the frozen metal rails. The lantern went out twice, leaving her in total darkness. But Kate continued. Because she knew that 200 people were sleeping in their comfortable bunks, dreaming of their families, never imagining that in less than an hour they would be dead if she couldn't cross that bridge. When she finally reached the other side, Kate was so exhausted she could barely stand. But the train station was still over a mile away. She started running through the mud, tripping over roots, falling and getting up repeatedly. Her lungs burned. Her heart was beating so hard she thought it would explode. But she kept running. Because the passenger train was getting closer and closer. She could feel the vibration in the rails. She heard the distant whistle cutting through the night. When Kate finally arrived at the Moingona station, covered in mud and blood, the workers couldn't believe what they were seeing. A girl appearing out of nowhere, in the middle of that apocalyptic storm, screaming about a destroyed bridge. But something in the intensity of her eyes, in the desperation of her voice, made them act immediately. They stopped the passenger train just 300 meters from the destroyed bridge. 200 lives were saved that night because of the courage of a girl who chose to face the impossible. The newspapers at the time called Kate Shelley a heroine. She received medals, public recognition, and even a small lifetime pension from the state of Iowa. But here's what no one tells you: as the years passed, her story began to disappear. History books that mentioned her name started being reprinted without her. School curricula that once taught about her courage simply removed her. And when you ask official historians why, they give vague excuses about limited space and historical relevance. But the truth is much darker. Kate Shelley didn't fit the narrative they wanted to tell about America. She was poor. She was a woman. She was Irish at a time when Irish people were considered second-class citizens. And worse yet, she did something that men in positions of power couldn't do: she acted when they would have hesitated. She was brave when they would have been cautious. She saved lives while they would have calculated risks. And that represented a problem for those who wrote official history. Because if a poor 15-year-old girl could be more heroic than trained adult men, what did that say about the entire power system built around the idea that leadership, courage, and strength were exclusively masculine and upper-class characteristics? So they did what they always do with inconvenient stories, they erased her. Not all at once, not obviously, but gradually, subtly, until entire generations grew up never hearing the name Kate Shelley. Until her bridge, that same Honey Creek bridge she crossed in the darkness, was rebuilt and renamed in her honor, but very few people knew why. Today, when you search for the greatest American heroes of the 19th century, you find generals, inventors, presidents, all men, almost all white, almost all wealthy. You don't find Kate Shelley. You don't find the story of how a barefoot girl shivering with cold did more for humanity in a single night than many of those men did in entire lifetimes. And that raises a disturbing question: how many other stories were erased? How many other heroes disappeared from the books because they didn't fit the convenient narrative? How many women, poor people, immigrants accomplished extraordinary feats that were simply forgotten because acknowledging them would mean admitting that courage and greatness have nothing to do with gender, class, or origin? Kate Shelley died in 1912, at 51 years old, after a life of hard work and little recognition. She never married, never had children, never became wealthy. But on that stormy night in 1876, she was the most important person in America. She was the difference between life and death for 200 people. She was living proof that heroism doesn't need a uniform, medals, or social position. It just needs courage to do what's right when everything is against you. So why have you never heard of her? Why was her story swept under the carpet of history? Because those who control the historical narrative are afraid of stories like Kate's. They're afraid of what happens when ordinary people realize they don't need permission, authority, or status to be heroic. They're afraid that you'll discover that inside you exists the same courage that existed inside that 15-year-old girl who crossed a bridge in the darkness to save strangers. And if you think this story is powerful, wait until you discover how many other heroes were erased from history for even more shocking reasons. People who changed the world but whose names were deliberately forgotten because their existence challenged convenient narratives about power, gender, and class. The next story will make you question everything you learned in school about who really built the modern world. Don't miss it.